Hello everyone, I am Mr. Green Cap. It started with a dying mother's strange demand, "Do not bury me." The result? 6 months later, her sons watched in paralyzed horror as their dead mother crawled out of her coffin to hunt, returning with fresh blood under her fingernails and raw meat between her teeth. Today, we look at a true record of terror. But remember, treat this as just a story, simply a story and nothing more. So, sit back, relax, and let's open the file. The story begins with Lao Ha. He was at a 4S dealership buying a car for his wife when his phone rang. The screen showed a strange number from Shandong. The voice on the other end was frantic, skipping all pleasantries. "I was introduced by so-and-so," the stranger said. "I have a very tricky situation. I need you to come personally." Lao Ha is a man of a particular profession, one not recognized by everyone. He's used to prank calls and wasted trips from his early days. So he's learned his lesson. For strangers, especially those over the phone, a deposit is mandatory. But this caller from Shandong seemed to know the rules. Before Lao Ha could even ask what was wrong, the man hung up saying, "Add me on WeChat." Moments after Lao Ha accepted the friend request, a heavy deposit was transferred. When Lao Ha asked for details, the reply was evasive. "This can't be explained over the phone. We need to talk face to face." Lao Ha went home, packed his tools, and drove through the night. He arrived past midnight. 3 men were waiting for him, 3 brothers. But instead of taking him to the scene, they took him to eat first, a display of Shandong hospitality that was sincere and solid. No nonsense, just hearty local dishes. Lao Ha would later recall, that meal was filling, it was comfortable. A final comfort before the descent. After the meal, the brothers insisted Lao Ha leave his car and ride with them. They drove to an old, dilapidated residential complex on the edge of the county town. It was truly old, the kind where the wall paint had peeled off in sheets. They stopped at the furthest building and entered a ground floor apartment, the East Unit. Lao Ha was puzzled. These 3 brothers wore luxury watches and drove expensive cars. Why did they live in such a ruin? But as soon as he stepped inside, that question became irrelevant. Every window in the house was sealed tight with thick, heavy cotton cloth. Not a ray of light could enter. In the center of the living room sat a coffin, key, black, small, and oppressive. In front of it lay a pile of burnt zhu qian, spirit money meant to bribe the corrupt gods of the underworld. But what struck Lao Ha the most was the dust. The coffin was covered in a thick layer of gray dust. It looked as if it had been parked there for a very long time. Lao Ha had his guesses, but the reality was far more disturbing. "Tell me everything," Lao Ha said, cutting to the chase. The 3 brothers fell silent. Finally, the eldest lit a cigarette, the smoke curling in the stale air, and began to speak. This was their parents' home. Years ago, their father died of illness. Their mother was devastated. She was so grief-stricken she insisted on keeping the old man's ashes in the house. The brothers eventually compromised. They were bound by Shaoshun, a form of filial piety so absolute it acts like a chain. In this culture, obedience is survival. If a mother wants to keep a corpse, the sons must keep a corpse. If she demands to die in a box, they buy the box. Questions are forbidden. Before their father died, their mother was a bright, cheerful woman who loved to take walks and buy groceries. But after he passed, she changed. She became deeply melancholic, rarely going out. She ordered her sons to seal the windows with that heavy cotton. She lived alone in the darkness, accompanied only by her husband's ashes. The daughters-in-law found it too creepy and stopped visiting out of fear. The 3 brothers took turns checking on her. It was unsettling, yes, but she was their mother. They weren't afraid. But starting in 2021, the mother began emphasizing one specific instruction. "When I die, do not cremate me. Do not bury me. buy a small coffin and keep me in this room. It became her obsession. Whenever they asked why, she refused to explain. "Just do as I say," she would demand. Then, on March 14th of last year, she called her eldest son. "I'm not going to make it," she said. "Call your brothers. Come to the old house immediately. Don't tell anyone else, not even your wives." The brothers rushed over by 7 p.m. They found her dressed in her burial clothes, hunched over a small cane. In that sealed, airless room, the atmosphere was enough to make even her own sons tremble. She gave her orders. The eldest was to buy a coffin that very night. The second was to fetch soil. The third was to stay and keep watch. The brothers were stunned. They realized she was serious. Who keeps a body in the house? They tried to refuse, but the mother, faster than they expected, grabbed a kitchen knife and held it to her neck. "Do it, or I die right now." Terrified, the eldest and second brother obeyed. They brought the small coffin in under the cover of darkness and filled it with the soil the second brother had dug up. The next morning, March 15th, she ordered the third brother to buy groceries. She cooked personally. The family of 4 ate a final reunion dinner. After the meal, she pulled them close. "I am leaving soon," she whispered. "After I go, put my body in the coffin, bury me in the earth inside it, but you must leave my face exposed. Tell no one, do exactly as I say, or I will not rest in peace." She wept, stroking their heads one last time. Moments later, she passed away. The true horror began then. The brothers cried, heartbroken. But once the tears dried, the second and third brothers looked to the eldest. "Do we follow her wishes or follow procedure?" The eldest brother sat there, chain-smoking, the air thick with tension. Finally, he stood up. "We do as she said." He was a rational man, a man who didn't believe in ghosts, but he respected his mother above all. But there was a problem. Rigor mortis. The mother was hunched, her body bent from age. How could they lay her flat in the coffin? As they struggled, a wild cat screamed outside the window. There's an old belief in those parts. A cat's breath can spark a collision of souls. And as if answering that ancient warning, the mother's body miraculously began to straighten. Bit by bit, the joints creaked and unlocked. The brothers, terrified but committed, bricked up the coffin base, positioned it to face their father's shrine, laid her inside, and covered her with earth, leaving only her pale face visible. It was done, but the image of their mother, buried in dirt in their living room, staring up at the ceiling, left them exhausted and numb. To avoid trouble, they checked on her frequently. 6 months passed. Nothing happened. The body did not rot. She looked exactly as she did the day she died. That alone was strange enough. But then, the neighbors started talking. Nearby was a school. Many elderly residents in the complex took care of their grandchildren. Opposite the brothers' unit lived an old couple with their grandson. The boy was rowdy, often stomping on the stairs. One evening, the boy didn't come home for dinner. His grandfather found him sitting dazed in the flower bed outside. When the grandfather shouted, the boy burst into tears. He said he had tried to come home, but he saw the door of the opposite apartment, the brother's mother's house, cracked open. The old grandma was hiding behind the door, the boy sobbed. She was staring at me. Her eyes were scary. The old couple knew the neighbor had passed away. They assumed the boy was just hallucinating or that they had upset the spirit with the noise. The grandfather decided to go over the next day to apologize. He knocked. No answer. By coincidence, the second brother arrived to check the house. The grandfather told him what the boy saw. The second brother broke into a cold sweat, but played it off. "Oh, Mom's been sick. Big brother took her to his place this morning." He fled the building, legs shaking. Back in his car, he called his eldest brother. Just then, a knock on his car window made him jump. It was the upstairs neighbor. "Hey," the neighbor asked, What is your old lady doing at night? Every midnight there's this sound. Scritch, scritch. Like someone digging at the wooden door with their fingernails. Is your door broken? The second brother was stunned. The boy might have been lying, but two neighbors. That night the three brothers met. They were scared. The body hadn't rotted in 6 months. Now this. They decided to stake out the house. For 7 nights, they sat in their car, watching. On the 7th night, in the dead hour of early morning, the third brother was on watch. He heard it. Cree. The familiar sound of the old security door opening. He saw a black shadow slowly emerge from the hallway. He shook his brothers awake. They held their breath. They watched as a hunched figure tiptoed out of the building. It was her, their mother, dead for half a year. She moved stealthily, yet with terrifying agility. No footsteps, just silence. She reached the compound wall and, whoosh, vaulted over it like a beast, heading toward the lake in the east. The brothers were frozen. 10 minutes later, the figure returned. This time she was holding something, a duck, a live, dripping, bloody duck. She crouched in the shadows of the stairwell corner. She set upon the bird. The brothers watched as she tore into the raw meat, feasting, gnawing. Half her body in shadow, half her face illuminated by moonlight, chewing with a rhythmic, wet crunch. After 10 minutes of feeding, she wiped her mouth and tiptoed back into the building. The eldest brother, the skeptic, felt every hair on his body stand up. That was his mother, his Nyang Chin, his revered mother. They waited until sunrise. When the sun was high and bright, they built up the courage to enter the room. There she was, lying in the coffin, peaceful, quiet, as if the night had been a hallucination. But they looked closer. Her hands had shifted slightly out of the soil. They pried her fingers open, under the nails. Dark, congealed blood. They pried her mouth open. Between the teeth, raw meat fibers and small feathers. They didn't hesitate. They ran. They used every connection they had until they found Lao Ha. Lao Ha listened to the whole story. He asked one question. Did she meet anyone strange before she died? The brothers, busy with business, had no idea. You're lucky, Lao Ha said. You found out early. If you had waited longer, this would have been geometrically harder to handle. She is not your mother, Lao Ha told them. She has become a vessel. It was a ritual known as Lian Shi, corpse refining. Not magic, but mechanics. The body had become a battery, buried in a specific geometry and fed with blood to charge itself on darkness. She wasn't resting. She was evolving. The solution? Simple. Crude. Fire. They burned it all. Don't ask me for the detailed process of the ritual. We are here to listen to stories, not to learn dark arts. And frankly, you couldn't learn it even if I told you. The brothers, trying to be good sons, were blinded by that twisted Xiao Shun. They believed they were fulfilling a dying wish. In reality, they were serving as raw materials for a monstrosity. And the master who taught her this, the one who designed the trap, the Jew, he was never found. He is still out there, walking among the living, perhaps looking for his next student. This is the 21st century, and yet such shadows remain. Remember, this is just a story. But do believe in science, and maybe, if you hear scratching coming from a room that should be empty, just let it scratch. Don't open the door. I am Mr. Greencap. See you next time.